All right, we're returning now to the Dvar Malchut, the speech that the Lubavitcher Rebbe gave in the very end of 1991. And here he's speaking about the month, the moon. Of course, this relates to also the battle between Esav and Jacob, and relates also especially to the holidays of this month of Kislev, which occur at the end of the month. Surprisingly, in Judaism, all the holidays are in the beginning or in the middle of the month. Judaism, they count according to the moon. And once every, whatever, 3-4 years, and they adjust it according, they put in an extra month, but the Jewish calendar is according to the moon. And the moon also represents God's revelation in the world. God's revelation in the world. The moon is like the world, and the light of the moon is like God's revelation. And that's the whole thing of the Jewish people also, that that's our job, is to make God's revelation in the world. So all of the holidays in Judaism come in the beginning of the month or in the very middle of the month. The middle of the month is when the moon is full. And the beginning of the month is when the moon is, what do they call it? Waxing, getting bigger and bigger. The light is getting more and more. So that's Judaism, making the world more light and bigger light and a full light. And if you remember, we talked about last week, we talked about the new moon, just the beginning, the first tiny sliver of the moon, which is showing just the existence of the moon, just the existence of God. And we talked about just the fact there is such a thing as Moshiach, the existence of Moshiach, and that we know that there's hope for the world. And this, but that's the beginning of the month, when things are getting good and they're getting bigger. But and then after that, right, there's 30 days in the month. The first 15 days of the month are great. The moon gets bigger, but the last 15 days of the month are terrible. That's when the moon is getting smaller. And there are some people it's a custom in Israel to avoid getting married in the second half of the month because it's not good luck, because the moon is getting smaller. It's not a law, but it's a very strong custom. And so the second half of the month is when the moon gets smaller. And what can we do? That's life. Sometimes things get big, sometimes they're small, sometimes they're good, sometimes not so good, sometimes there's light and there's dark. It says the Rebbe, 1 second. If the Jews count the months, they count the month time, they count according to the months, and they count, the main thing by the Jews is the months is the moon. So how is it that when the moon is getting smaller, the days of the month are getting bigger? Huh? And instead of having, like in the month, the first day, second day, 15th day of the month, and then you have 14B, 13B. The maximum should be 15, and then it gets smaller and smaller. How can it possibly be that the numbers are getting bigger when there's less and less light? How can it be? So obviously this is teaching us some sort of a lesson, because it seems to be the opposite of Judaism. In Judaism, you always go up in holiness. You always go up in holiness. And here we have the moon gets smaller and smaller. So the Rebbe says, no, it's not so. That's why the numbers get bigger, because somehow or other, the lessening of the light of the moon, the waning of the moon, is a higher level of revelation of God than the waxing of the moon. Right? When the moon gets more and more light, that's a sign of godliness, more and more godliness. And when it gets dark, it's even greater dark godliness. How can that be? That makes no sense. Light, we're talking about light, making light. Now we're saying darkness is good. What's going on? First half of the month, light is good. The second half of the month, dark is good. Right? How does that make? Does that make any sense? So the Rebbe is going to explain how it makes sense. Let's go. The explanation is like this. Lavana Bachama, the moon and the sun, they are Mekabalu Mashpia. The moon is the receiver, and the sun is the giver. Excuse me, 1 second. That's why In the Torah, God is always referred to as masculine, because the masculine aspect is the giver, the giving aspect. The receiver is the feminine aspect, Mother Earth. Mother Earth, because it receives. The earth receives the seed, the earth receives the water. But the heavens are always considered to be masculine. That gives, that's the giving aspect. Excuse me. Shalavana, that the moon, the moon has nothing of its own. Umakabelas, and it receives its light from the sun. But ofen ashpa, and the way that it receives is in the beginning, it receives only a little bit of light. That's like when the moon just is born, new moon, just a little point. And from day to day, it adds on and gets bigger, more and more light, ad yom tetvav, until the 15th day of the month. Shinit Mole discuss that there is filled the globe of the moon. Kayamasir of Shlemusa, then the moon is complete. Shinit Mole v'nishlam, that it is full and it is complete, the light which the moon receives from the sun. But keeping Shagam Kishanit Malayiv, since that when the moon gets bigger, Benishlam or Lavan, and the light becomes full. Harihu Adayin Bebechinas Makabel. Nevertheless, the moon is always in the level of a receiver. As Ein Zetachlit Ashlemo to Lavana, so it can't be the ultimate completion of the moon, that it becomes shining full like the sun. And it doesn't have to receive anymore. In the middle of the month, it doesn't have to receive, so it stops being a moon. Like it says, Vaya Ora Lavana, that says that the moon, the light of the moon, will be like the light of the sun. Like it was before God made it small. It says on the 4th day of creation that God created the two lights, and then afterwards it says in the big light and the small light. But it doesn't. In the beginning, it says that God created two lights. It seems to imply that they were equal. And then after that, it says one was big and one was small. It could have just said in the beginning that God created a big light and a small light. What does it say? In the beginning, the two lights, Stein Morota Gedolim, the two luminaries were both big when God created them. And then God made one of them small. So what's going on? The moon is supposed to be small. So what do you want to say? That when in the middle of the month, then it's not small anymore. It's not small. All of a sudden, then it becomes full. Yesh Lomar, we can say, when the moon became big, when the moon became full and it receives from the sun, Nasit Shlemos Nalit Yoter, becomes even higher than the moon is. Yoter Shalavana Hi Kamo Chama, that when the moon is like the sun, when the moon is receiving, then it's it's a higher level than when it's full. Why? Because when the moon is just receiving, it's receiving something that's higher than both of them. There becomes a light to both of them. This highest level of revelation, which unites the sun and the moon so that the moon can be full, it comes from an aspect that the moon is a receiver. And because the moon is a receiver, so it can evoke a level which is higher than both the sun and the moon. Let's explain this. Okay, so again, let me just say this again. The moon gets, in the beginning, it's missing something, right? It's just a sliver, and then it comes at the 15th of the month. When it reaches the 15th of the month, then, so to speak, the moon becomes like the sun. In order for the moon to become like the sun, it must be that there's a level which is higher than both of them, which is revealed. That the sun and the moon can unite. In order to unite them, there must be some uniting factor that unites both of them. And this uniting factor is higher than both the sun and the moon. And we'll see what this is. And this uniting factor is revealed in the second half of the month. What does this mean? Siva Sashina, the difference between the first half of the month, when every day the light gets bigger, and the and the second half of the month, when every day the light gets smaller, is because in the first half of the month, the moon gets further away from the sun. And all that the moon gets further away from the sun, so the light becomes more. And the second half of the month, when the moon becomes closer to the sun, so then when it becomes closer to the sun, then the back part of the moon is illuminated by the sun, but we don't see that. We don't see that. Kachol shemitkarev is the closer that it gets to the sun, miyom liyom, so the light that we see becomes less and less. Huh? Very simply, you could take a what do you call it? Let's see, what's it? You take a ball, take a bowling ball, and there's a light which is on one side of the room. You take the bowling ball and you put it on the other side of the room. You can see that light is reflected on the bowling ball. The more you move that bowling ball toward, away from the opposite side of the room, toward, let's say, the middle of the room, so you can only see the half that the light is shining on. The other half is there's no light shining on it. That's facing the. And when the moon comes directly in line with the sun, or in that same, how do you say, that same parallel, or whatever it is the sun is, so then you don't see the moon at all, because the moon is close to the sun, and the sun is shining on that part of the bowling ball that's facing it. So all that the moon, I mean, I think everybody knows this. So the moon, all the moon comes closer to the sun, so to speak, the less light is revealed to us, because the sun is shining on only that side of the moon which is facing it and not facing us. Okay. So it comes out sort of a, what do you want to call it, a paradox. The closer the moon comes to the source of the light, the less light we receive, the less it shines to us. Why? Because the yachas between mashpia, because the connection, the relationship between the giver, the sun, and the receiver, the moon, is in a way that when the receiver is closer to the giver, so therefore the receiver cannot give over the light. It's too busy receiving. Because it's so busy receiving, it can't give anything over. Like, let's say you have a big, great teacher, right? And the teacher is teaching you. And then that teacher, the professor that taught your teacher, he comes in and gives a class. Your teacher is listening to his professor, so he can't give anything over to you. He's busy taking in from his teacher. When the more that the moon becomes further away, in your example, your teacher becomes further away from his professor that taught him, so he can give over to you. Then he can give over. When we can say the Kirov, when the moon comes close to the sun in the second half of the month, this is not just to renew the moon and the sun and the molad that's going to come for the next month, right? It's just completing the cycle. It gets bigger and smaller. So you want to start a new cycle, so you have to finish the first cycle. So the second half of the month is not finishing the first cycle. It's not just to finish the first cycle. They mute, but the moon gets less and less from day to day. That this is the thing of that the moon becomes, what do you call it, surrendered. It comes closer to its giver, to its source. Like it says, Ki poked Moshiach, that it becomes empty. But really, it's going closer to its source so that it can receive more light. This is a thing which is on itself. The end part of the month is not just a preparation, it's a recharging the moon for the next month. but it's something in itself. Gam be'ikar kiruv le'etzem shelamayla gam or dachama. It's coming closer to something which is even higher than the light of the sun itself. This is talking about the crown, which is for both of them. Shekiruv ledargazu mitbatet b'miut or. This is by lessening the light. Now, there's going to be a big lesson for this for us. Because light is a revelation from the essence. That the essence is concealed. Therefore, miut or miyom liyom, more of the fact that the light is getting less, this shows a kiruv le'etzem shalamayla mi'or. By means of this, nasis the sun, moon becomes like the sun. Keter echad l'shneim, a crown to both of them. Let me explain what this is what's going on, as according to my understanding, and we'll continue. The Rebbe wants to say that there's three things here. There's a receiver, there's a giver, and then there's the source of the giver, which is higher than all the other previous two. There's a giver, there's a receiver, and then there's the source of both of them, which is higher than. Maybe I can give you an example. Let's say a person that's got, let's say he's got a bad temper, right? Let's set that example, got a bad temper. But he gets things done. He got a bad temper, but he gets things done. He yells at people, tells them what to do, gets all angry, and everybody does what he wants. They're all angry, but he's destroying his life, and he makes everybody around them feel miserable, but he gets everything done. And so now he says, I had enough of this. I'm destroying myself. I'm destroying my marriage. I'm destroying everything around me. I mean, everybody does what I say, but it's really bad. I got to stop this. So what does he do? He sits down and he starts to think. Right? And he starts to think, listen, this anger is really a bad thing. I have to stop it. So the more he gets close to this realization that, getting angry is a bad thing, so he stops. He gets more and more, he stops doing it. The same thing with the drunkard with this, so he stops doing it. Okay, once he does succeed in stopping doing the bad things, which for him were really good. I mean, let's take our example, right? When he was angry, he got things done. It's like the moon becoming more and more full. When everybody listened to him, but suddenly he realized, listen, there's something wrong over here. I gotta stop this. So now the moon is getting smaller. He stops getting angry when things used to make him angry. He stops getting angry. But now he feels empty. He feels empty. It used to be that, when somebody would, mess something up, do something wrong, he would flame into anger and start yelling. He knew what to do, but now he feels all empty and all like cold inside, terrible. Also the same thing, the drunkard, the drug addict, what's he gonna do now? He feels all empty and all weak and all this and that. But really, in that time, when he feels that emptiness that he's feeling, he's really attaching himself to something which is higher than any, any result, good result that he can get. He's connecting himself to something that's like the source of all good, the source of all calmness, the source of all productivity, the source of love. Before, when he was angry, he didn't have any of those things. He didn't have any love. He didn't have any calm. He didn't have anything. But he just had success. That's like the moon getting bigger and bigger. And now when he stops, it's like the moon getting smaller. But suddenly he's getting in contact with something which is even higher than any of the results that he would have wanted, the calmness or understanding. Right? That's like being close to the sun. But there's something that's higher that unites him. I don't know if it's a good example, but I'm just saying that the emptiness that he feels, he's connecting himself to something that's like higher than the world, higher than anything you could possibly imagine. The ability that he had to change himself. So that's what he's saying. When the moon gets smaller, it's not just connecting to the light of the sun, it's connecting to the essence of the sun, from the place where the sun itself gets its light. Now, this is going to be very relevant to the Jewish people and to us also. When something, God forbid, bad happens to us, and I say God forbid because we don't want anything bad to happen, when it's happening. So really, it could very well be that this is a big preparation. I mean, it certainly is, but at least we have to entertain the possibility that this is somehow or other a revelation of the essence. It's so high that it can't be translated into any sort of light, any sort of a normal way of, how do you say, aspect of our personality. And this the Rebbe is going to connect with Yud Tet Kislev and with Chanukah. Why those holidays appear? The holidays which are connected to light, oil, which is a source of light, and they happen in the second half of the month because they're connecting somehow to this essence of good. Let's do a little bit more. We have a little bit deeper. Haklal sha'etzem ubehelem, that the essence is concealed and light is revealed. Hu b'yachas lezulos. This is in relation to others. Shekeven she'enu yokol. Since a person is not able to accept from the essence just a ray of the essence alone, look, and therefore Korah comes the aura or. And therefore, the ray that we get of reality of good is called light. But the essence of the source of this is called darkness, choshech. But in connection to the essence, this is exactly the opposite. Sha'oro, choshech, that when it's revealed, that's darkness regarding the light. In other words, light can sometimes be a problem. Light can sometimes be a big problem. I'll try to give another example. We just had this people, Yerovam ben Nevat. Yerovam ben Nevat. The same thing, the enemies of King David, Doag, Achitophel, Shimi ben Gera. These people were geniuses, talented. There's no one anywhere you can find that's anywhere near the holiness and the spirituality of these people. Right? They knew the whole Torah. They knew everything. They knew they had power of prophecy. They had power of leadership. Everything they had, but they didn't have the essence. They didn't have darkness. They couldn't give themselves over to something that they didn't understand, that wasn't grasped by them. Right? They couldn't take King David. King David, his main thing was, even though it says he was a genius, his main thing was he was totally surrendered. And through all of the troubles that he had, he never once doubted God or had any, he was pleading to God, please stop it. Stop these terrible tortures that I'm experiencing, right? It's enough, God, enough. He wasn't doubting God. He was thinking, listen, maybe the reason God is giving me all these troubles, so I should pray. It's a commandment to pray to God. And just by the way, what is the purpose of prayer? If everything that comes from God is really good, and all this darkness is really good, so why should we pray? So the answer is that we pray, we say to God, listen, okay, God, everything that you do is good. I agree, and it's good, and it's for the good. But God, I mean, you're infinite, and you're supposed to be a good that's revealed. You can't figure out a way to accomplish the same result that you're doing by means of this bad. You can't figure out a way to do it in a way that's not so bad. I mean, the only way you can accomplish this good is by, grandpa being sick or there being a Holocaust or whatever. Get us out of this terrible exile that we're in. Stop it. Enough. It's a commandment to pray. We're saying, good, God, whatever you do is good, but make it in a way that we can understand that's good. You shouldn't have any trouble doing that. That's what we're praying for. We're praying that God should make a good that we can understand. Nevertheless, says the Rebbe, the fact is that when the essence is revealed, it's dark. It's incomprehensible. It's too good. So now we can understand that why there had to be a lessening in the last part of the month. There has to be a minimizing of light, in order to come close to the essence. This is only in the time when there is Shenishar begeder shall mitziut b'pnei atzmo zulat. When is it that we have to? I'm sorry. From this, we can understand that that there has to be less and less light in order to receive from the essence. This is only when we are separate, a separate entity into ourselves, separate. When we are feeling ourselves separate from God, then the more the closer we come to the essence, the darker it is. Because we're not able to receive from God's essence. We're someone separate. But when you are united with the mashpia, let's take the example with the bowling ball, right? When you are separate and you're looking at the bowling ball from separate, then the further away it is, then you can see light. But when the bowling ball comes close to the source, then it's dark to you, but to the bowling ball, it's more light. So if you can unite yourself with the bowling ball or with the source where the bowling ball is receiving, then there's more light. You're receiving more from the essence. Then the bowling ball, in our case, that comes closer, the moon, when it's close to the sun, then it becomes like the sun. Then, so to speak, there's no giver or receiver. Both of them are equal. The light of the moon becomes like the light of the sun. Then the essence is revealed. According to this, now we can say that the minimizing, the lessening of light in the first half, sorry. Therefore, we can say that the lessening of light in the second half of the month, this is only becoming darker in the light itself, because the light is the light is the lessening of the light is a result of the moon getting closer to its source. But it's not lessening the revelation of the essence. You're just removing the details. And therefore, I'll tell you a story in just one moment. Therefore, the numbers are getting bigger. The end of the month becomes bigger because we thought we were counting in the month, that we were counting the light. But the fact is, we're not counting in the month. We're not counting the light. There's something much higher than the light, and that is the essence, the source of the light. And the less light that there is, the more the essence is shining. Therefore, the number becomes bigger of the days of the month by means of the Jewish people. Because the essence of the Jews, the essence of God, is more in revelation. And that's a thing that cannot be put in any terms of light. Maybe I'll give you an example. I don't know if this is a good example. There's a story. Good story. Good story. Tell you a story. Story time. Once there was a poor man, a poor Jew, and he did a big favor for this big tzaddik, holy man. The tzaddik said, okay, you're going to become rich. You're going to tremendously rich, but don't forget the poor. So don't worry about it. And sure enough, this poor person, he found a diamond, whatever it is, and he announced it. And he found this tremendous sum of money, and it didn't belong to anybody. It belonged to the soldiers. They stole it from people. Whatever it is, he got money. And he invested this money and he became tremendously rich. There's different beginnings of the story, how he became rich. Nevertheless, he became rich. Fantastically rich. And he started building a big house on the main street of the road where he used to live. He used to be on the street. He used to collect. He was a poor person collecting money. Now he built a huge big mansion over there. And he furnished it with the greatest furniture. Of course, he gave charity. He didn't forget. He gave charity. And one day he had an opportunity. He read about he bought a big mirror, a big, beautiful, expensive mirror from France. And he got some of an interior decorator and decorated his house, the interior of his house. And he put this mirror over the front window, which used to look over the street, which the street wasn't such a beautiful view anyway. And he moved the red windows to another side where you could look at the sky, look at the beautiful garden he had in the backyard. Anyway, and what about giving money? So it was very busy. It was very difficult for him to give money, but he put a person by the door that would give money to the poor people. The poor people would come and he would give money to them, right? They would give money to them. And then he started worrying, maybe the people that are coming, maybe he's giving away too much. So it would make it, he only gave money like on Tuesday and Thursday or whatever. And he had, anyway, however it is, he limited the amount of money. So one day, this big tzaddik comes back to the rich man's house. And he comes to the door and they say, I'm sorry, this only, we receive only on, Monday and Thursday. And he just pushes his way through. He says, excuse me, sir, the guard didn't want to push this old man. So he runs upstairs and he tells us, master, there's this old man that pushed his way into the house. The owner comes down with a couple of guards, says, oh, it's you gave me this. Oh, I'm so happy to see you. Come, I'm sorry we didn't let you in. I didn't know it was you. Let me show you around the house. Would you like something to eat, something to drink? No, I just want to look around your house. He says he wants to look around the house a little bit, so he's looking, nice room. And he takes him over, he says, there's a nice mirror. A nice mirror. He got, oh yeah, this thing. I got it from France. The thing cost me, $10,000. Isn't it beautiful? So he says, well, what's behind it? So if I put it in front of the window that's looking into the street, because it sort of bothered me, the street. And I had an interior decorated. He says, why, how the interesting, the mirror, how that works, how you look at, you see yourself. Yes, it's plated on the blade with pure silver. So this tzaddik, he takes out a little penknife and he starts scraping the silver away. So he says, excuse me, don't do that, because he says, no, I'm just, says, listen, I'd like to show you another room. Please don't do that. You're gonna wreck the mirror. But what can he do to this man? The tzaddik, everything that he has was from his blessing. He's just humming away and says, he's scraping away. Says, tell me, you're still giving charity to the poor people? Oh yeah, I give charity, not every day, but I give, as much as I can. So he's scraping away, and finally he scrapes a hole, and this guy's trying to dissuade him. But I mean, all of his riches come from this poor person, so he's wrecking up his mirror. He puts it into proper perspective. So he scrapes away the mirror, and then behind the mirror was the window. So he opens up the drapes from the window. So he says, here, look at this place. And then what do you see? He says, in the mirror, I see myself. He says, look over here where I scraped away. What do you see? He says, well, you scraped away the silver. So, I don't see, I can't see. I said, what do you see? He says, I see like a sort of reflection of myself. I said, no, but what do you see through that? Says, well, now, excuse me, you took away the silver, so I see the window. Says, what do you see through the window? I see the street, what do you see in the street? He would like to say, listen, enough of this foolishness, I got the things to do, but this is the tzaddik gave him the blessing. Everything he's got comes from him. He has to, how do you say, bear it. So he says, well, I see in the street, I see people walking. He says, what people do you see? He says, oh, look at over there. I see, that was Zelda, the widow. Oh, she doesn't look good. She looks, what do you see over there? He says, oh, those are her children, the orphans, Let's see over there. What do you see over there? Oh, that's Shlomo. He's digging in the garbage. He says, see, that's the point I was trying to teach you. What's the point? Is when you're rich and you have this and you have a cover of silver, all you see is yourself. All you can see is yourself. But sometimes if you take away the silver, then your essence comes out. Then you become a nice person, you become a good person, you see others. You can be a human being. So maybe I think a good idea, I should take away all of your riches and you'll be a human being again because you lost it. No. I don't. I promise. My door will be open. I'll be down there. Anytime a person comes, I'll come to the door. I'll be kind. I'll go into the streets. I'll give my money to the people on the street. What's the point? What the point is sometimes revelations, money. Who doesn't want money? Sometimes revelations hides a person's essence. Like I said, Yerovam ben Nevat, they were geniuses, but it hid who he really was. Right? It hid really what he was. He should have been a servant of God, and he couldn't do it. Couldn't bear himself, couldn't bear King David, couldn't bear that. So that's what the Rebbe wants to say over here. Sometimes the first part of the month where the moon is getting bigger and bigger, so we see more and more light and more revelations, more riches. But the end of the month, when things are getting darker, so true, we don't see in a way that we can interpret, in a way that everyone will respect us and everything this. But on the other hand, we see more the essence. We see true meaning, true love. And the Rebbe will explain more. Let's do today's Yom Yom. Sort of went over the time a little bit, but that's okay. Here, Yom, excuse me for this. Nice story, though. There were times when Rebbe Yechusa, I think we did this, didn't we do this? We did this, 1 second. Today, what happened? Somehow or other, I got confused. We did this, 1 second, 1 minute. Today is what? Today is the 10th. What happened? Hey, how do we get to such a date like this? Today is the 11th day of Kislev. How did we get to the first day of Kislev? 1 second, 1 minute. 1 minute. Something happened over here. Let's go back to the beginning. Back to, come on. Yom Daily Chabad. Here we go. Good. At this point, okay, emendations, corrections in the Siddur, in a book which was written by the first Rebbe of Chabad, which is Maimori Chassidut in the Siddur. So we'll talk about more tomorrow. There'll be a message we can use for day to day. Have a good day with Moshiach now.